Veritas Aquitus by Bones Boy 15, Chapter 11. Nerds. I think I'm going to be sore for the rest of my life and part of my death. John groaned as he walked towards the cafeteria with his team. It had been a week since he'd been introduced to his new appointed teacher, and since day one, he'd regretted it. He glared at Pyrrha when she let out a small giggle. Sub-partner you are, leaving me to take most of Professor Guy's beatings. You asked me to help you train John. Sometimes training is just that. Pyrrha smiled at her partner and team leader. She gave him a small pat on the shoulder, which made him wince. Besides, you're the one who informed him that you didn't know what your semblance was yesterday, not me. An admission I will regret for all eternity, John grumbled as he hung his head. He looked over at his other teammates, giving the two longtime friends a small glare. And what's your excuse for leaving me high and dry like that? I can barely breathe in that suit, Ren said with a shrug. Why try to fight? You were doing fine until he got you with that kick to the head. Nora smiled at her team leader. She wagged a finger at him. I keep telling you to aim for his knees. Not my fault you didn't listen. First of all, he kicked me in the head at the start of the fight, I think. It's all kind of fuzzy after nearly a week of beatings, John said as he rubbed his head. He shook himself out of the thoughts and glared at Nora. Secondly, I could barely hear anyone over the sounds of my own screams. You should have stopped screaming then, Nora said with a simple shrug. John glowered at her and then at Ren. Does she even know what pain is? Ren shrugged. It's hard to tell sometimes. It's an unpleasant feeling caused by intense or damaging stimuli like stubbing your toe or getting walloped by a hammer. Nora scoffed. Her teammates gave her odd looks and she pouted. Hey, I'm not dumb. Just a bit, Ren? Distracted. Yeah, distracted. Thanks, Ren. Pyrrha shook her head and gave John a smile. Look, on the bright side, John. If Professor Guy continues this way, you'll discover your semblance in no time. That, or I'll die trying. That's the spirit. Pyrrha beamed. I swear you wouldn't know what sarcasm was even if it hit you in the face. John grumbled sourly as he pushed the cafeteria door open. He was moments from getting in line behind his teammates when an arm slung itself around his shoulders. PJ, how's life with Guy? Kerma asked, ignoring the pained look that crossed his friend's face. John opened his mouth, but it was covered by Kerma's hand. Wait, don't tell me. The faunus held his camera up and gave a fanged grin. I already have an image. You're evil, John grumbled. Kerma had done nothing but cheer him on and taunt him with catcalls. Am I? Am I really? Kerma asked. Yes. A brow arched over his sunglasses. If I was truly that evil, I would have already dispersed copies of this all over the school. Your reputation would be ruined. What reputation? John asked sourly. Touche. Kerma looked at his camera. So I can just go ahead and hand these out, right? I thought you didn't like bullying, John asked. I don't. It's a truly detestable act, but this is mere teasing, my friend, and you are my friend, John, Kerma said with a small smile. He patted the short blonde hard on the shoulder. You just happen to be the lamest of them all. Wow, I feel so relieved. Did you hear the sarcasm in that sentence? Because I meant it, John said dryly. I'm rubbing off on you so well. Kerma sniffed, pocketed his camera, and wiped a tear away from his eye. You make me so proud. Shut up, Kerma. John grumbled. He sighed and rubbed his arms. Besides, those pictures would ruin Pyrrha's rep too. But would that be a bad thing? Kerma asked. He relaxed and became slightly more serious as he nodded towards the red-headed warrior. Look at your partner, John, and then look at everyone around her. John looked at Pyrrha, watched her as she spoke to Nora in line, possibly trying to get the girl to eat something other than pancakes. His gaze washed over the lunchroom and he saw many students sneak glances at her and then return to their small groups. Okay, so she's popular. Wouldn't that be bad for her if you got those photos out then? John asked once more. Kerma sighed and scratched his head. I keep forgetting that most of the students here have not been taught like I was. Most went to places like Signal or Sanctum, or didn't go at all, John said with a frown. Kerma nodded at that. Indeed, but keep in mind that the first hunters didn't have a school to use as a crutch, John. They had to learn by trial and error, and that usually meant learning from word of mouth about another's death at the hand of a grim. John gave a small smile to that. Thanks, Kerma. Sorry about the whole Sarpus thing, getting beat up by Professor? No, don't call him that. Might Guy is just Might Guy. He's not a teacher, well, not born to be one anyway. If it were up to me, I'd ensure he had never been a teacher back home, Kerma said with a shudder. Some of that stuff he had us do was downright crazy. Like what? John asked nervously. If the past week was bad, it can't get worse, right? I'll let you find out for yourself, Kurama decided after a moment of silence. He smiled at his friend. Just try to remember he has your best interest in mind, and maybe go apologize to your team. Okay, John said. He was a bit unnerved and slightly worried by Kurama's choice of words, but did feel bad about the way he'd snapped at his team. It wasn't their fault that they'd been assigned a psycho as a teacher. Seated not far from Team Ruby, Kurama watched John talk with his team with a small smile on his face. He's got maybe 3 more days before a guy puts him in the emergency room trying to figure out what his semblance is. 3 days. Yeah, right, Sasuke said as he sat down to join his partner. He had a small black book in hand and held it in front of him like one of their old professors used to. He'll be in the hospital by tomorrow night for sure. How are you walking around with that book and not getting creamed for it? Kurama asked. Sasuke tapped the spine with his finger, covered the title and author. People who ask what it is, I tell them it's the duality. When asked who wrote the book, I tell them the author is anonymous. But what if someone tries to read it over your shoulder? Kurama asked. Please. My sense of awareness is far too high to... Oh, Nimato, yes, there, right there. Sasuke snapped his book shut and turned to glare at his team's leader, as well as the whiskered teen's snickered partner. He looked around nervously and sighed in relief when he realized the one had heard Naruto's readings of the current scene. I hate you, Uzumaki, so much. Sorry for the blue balls, but Asuma wants us to eat fast and then join him by Osman's office. Apparently some big brass is heading in from Atlas, Naruto said as he let his hands intertwine behind his head. Sasuke arched his brow as he tucked his book in his vest. And we've been requested because why? Asuma said it was because a crow flies far when it has a message to deliver, Naruto said with a shrug. Personally, I'd rather stick around and eat with Yang, but with the moment of trouble we're in already, we should probably lay low for a bit. And Naruto shuddered. Obey the rules. By ohms, while I'd never thought I'd hear you say that, Kurama mused. A pie suddenly flew into Weiss's face, and Team Nox looked over at Team Juniper. John and Pyrrha were as shocked as they were, while Ren had his face in his hands, and Nora pointed at her partner accusingly. So much for the whole lay low thing, Haku said dryly. Food fight! Run away! Mommy! Kurama clasped his hands together and ducked his head back. Please, don't let this be like the lunchroom of doom incident. Yeah, I think this can only end one way. So, as team leader, I strongly suggest we only observe from the high ground, Naruto declared with a finger thrust in the air while the other students fled the cafeteria. The whiskered blonde and his team relocated to the banister above, seated comfortably as they looked down at the two wearing teams. Team Juniper really built that castle fast, Haku noted. I've seen better, Naruto said with a shrug. He tilted his head as Nora started to sing. If she's queen, does that make Ren her king or knight? First of all, Ren's a bishop, Kurama said as he held a finger up while his other had held his scroll up to record the scene. He's too fast and swift to be a knight. If anything, Pyrrha is the knight. And John? Sasuke asked. Kurama shrugged. PJ's either the rook or pawn. Justice will be swift. Justice will be painful, Ruby declared with a finger pointed at the opposing team while she held a carton of milk in her other hand. The carton was crushed as she narrowed her eyes and bared a fist to Team Juniper. It will be delicious. Yeah, Weiss, Blake, and Yang declared with their fists raised. Off with their heads, Nora shouted with a cackle as she dropped down from her castle. Damn, those are some juicy melons, Naruto said as he stared down at Yang. He looked up when he felt stares from teammates. What? Those watermelons that Yang is destroying are huge? Oh, you meant the fruit? I thought you were talking about something else, Sasuke said. Naruto frowned in confusion. Like what? Look, son brought a friend, Kurama said to change the subject. He was not going to be subjected to, we were staring at your girlfriend's breast conversation with his team leader. Probably wouldn't be good for team dynamics. I wonder who that guy is. Ouch, that had to hurt, Naruto said as he watched his girlfriend take a long piece of rolled bread to the gut. And they say that breadsticks are nothing but empty calories. Interesting use of ketchup, Haku said thoughtfully. He winced when Ren slipped and crashed into a bunch of tables. That's what hurt in the morning. Kurama nodded in agreement and watched Nora perform an impressive dismount that ripped a pole from the wall and stabbed it into a watermelon to make an impromptu hammer. 6 out of 10. This mount was a bit shaky, and there's a perfectly good ham much closer to her. Those are far more durable than watermelons. I'll tell that to Ruby, Naruto said as he watched his fellow team leader go flying after Nora, nailed her with a watermelon hammer. All right, 7.3, but I won't raise it any higher. Since when did the lunchroom serve swordfish? Sasuke asked in bewilderment. It's a specialty today, Haku said with a frown, and I was looking forward to my cooked bass too. Told you to stock up right away, but no, Naruto said as he crossed his arms. No one ever listens to me. Twice, no. There goes that support pillar, Sasuke said dryly. I think it's for decoration, Kurama said. Naruto waved the two off. Guys, shut up. Yang is facing off against Ren. That son of a bitch just snuck a look under her skirt. Easy, Naruto. Yang was the one who decided to kick him, Haku pointed out. Naruto pouted childishly. Yeah, but that's my job, damn it. He perked up when Ren was smacked down into a pile of tables. Team Nox watched from above as Nora and Yang made eye contact. The two girls rushed each other, and the four boys began to debate the outcome of the matchup. Nora's insanely strong, Sasuke said. He crossed his arms. No way, she loses. Yeah, but this is Yang we're talking about. The femme, Naruto, Kurama said dryly. The two looked at their whiskered friend, who cupped his hands around his mouth. Go, Yang! Kick her ass, babe! Point taken, Sasuke said as they looked down at the fight. Yang may have stronger blows, but I believe Nora has the better reach, Haku surmised. I'll have to side with Nora on this one. Sorry, Naruto. You just watch while Yang kicks Nora's ass. Naruto's proud and assured retort was cut off as his girlfriend rocketed into him and they both broke through the ceiling. So yeah, Nora wins, I see. Kurama amended himself as he and his teammates stared at the hole their friends had made. Think they hit orbit? It's possibly. Whoa. Since when could Nikos do that? Sasuke asked as hundreds of everyone loves grape soda cans were directed by the red-headed beauty to fly at the sausage-armed Blake. Since forever, Kurama said dryly. Her semblance is polarity. Interesting. No wonder she's never been hurt by an opponent in the tournaments and has not missed the throw in her spot with her spear, Haku said. A most effective semblance in tournament fight, and her control over it is great if she's never lost because of her aura bar dropping. I feel bad for whatever person is put up against her in the Vital Festival tournament, Sasuke said. He was unaware that a few miles away, in Vale, a young man with silver hair sneezed and his mint-haired companion teased him. Same, Kurama nodded. They grabbed onto the banister when Ruby's hurricane of food made by her semblance eviscerated Team Juniper, and the winner is Team Ruby. You must admit that Ruby is quite adept with her semblance as well, Haku said thoughtfully. I've never seen a person so well trained with her speed. Indeed, the three boys turned to see Asuma standing on a nearby banister, a frown on his face and an unlit cigarette in his mouth. I believe I told you three to hurry and meet me in Aspen's office. Asuma arched the brow as the three boys became solemn. He looked around and his frown increased. Where's Naruto? Probably on the moon by now, Kurama said dryly. They looked down when the door slammed open and a furious Glinda Good Witch, followed by an equally upset Kurnai and Guy, strode in past the two dumbfounded teens that had a front row seat to the food fight. Good Witch waved her hands as a few plates flew at her, stopping them mid-air with her telekinesis abilities that she was never afraid to hide. Another wave set the tables, chairs, soda machines, and every other item back in place. That's concerning, Haku mused. Glinda Good Witch is a highly ranked huntress for a reason, Haku, Asuma said. He pointed towards the ground. Now, move or be moved. Your choice. Wisely, the three teens dropped down to the ground and landed with little difficulty. Asuma dropped down behind them and nodded to his teammates. Children, Good Witch began through gritted teeth. You should not play with your food. Team Juniper and the three girls of Team Ruby ducked their heads in shame until Nara burped and the 17s burst into snickers. Yang and Naruto's impromptu landing between the two groups made more laughter, known as the two blondes got to their feet and grinned at each other. Good Witch scowled and opened her mouth to say something, but was cut off by another voice. Let them be, Glinda, Aspen advised with a small smile as he watched the two teams interact while Naruto slipped over to his team when he caught Asuma's gaze. We're training to be hunters of remnant, Professor Aspen. They cannot act like children, Good Witch argued. Yes, they are, but for now, we'll let them be children, and in the meantime, their punishment for this will be decided by their current handlers, Asuma said to the two teachers, who nodded and approached their teams. He looked over at Asuma and Team Nox before he left the room. The headmaster turned and started to leave, only to stop when he came across Sun and a teen covered in purple liquid. You should probably hurry off to get those washed, Asuma said to the teen. I hear everyone loves grape stains. Yeah, good idea. The nervous young man nodded frantically before he grabbed Sun's shoulder and pulled him out of the cafeteria, the monkey-tailed faunus protesting as he did. Asma, please, if you and your team would accompany me to my office, Osman asked while he calmly left the cafeteria. Goodwich not far behind him. Asma nodded and led the 14s out after the headmaster. So, what's up, Profo? Naruto asked once the doors to Osman's office closed behind his team. Asma moved to the other side of the room and stood behind Osman as the headmaster took a seat behind his desk. Goodwich was on his right, her scroll opened and her eyes reading through it carefully. I believe that our first joint problem will soon be resolved, Osman said as he prepared himself some tea. However, I've received dire news from an acquaintance of mine concerning the Fourth War. Naruto's hands dropped from behind his head and his face grew serious. Kurama scowled and his tail flicked angrily while his arms crossed. Sasuke's hands tightened into a fist while he clenched his jaw and Haku's mouth fell as his shoulders tensed. Are we certain that they should be informed of this? You aren't, Professor Goodwich. With all due respect, I was the one that requested that my team was kept informed, Asma said firmly. His hard gaze met Goodwich's own, before he looked back at the four boys. These four boys are probably the only four people in the school with any real interactions with the Fourth War, the White Bang, and what Crow has dubbed the Queen Scheme. Haku furrowed his brow. Queen Scheme? Do not worry about it, Asuma said. He lit his cigarette with the match, despite the look of disapproval on Goodwich's face, and then took a drag before he continued. What we want you to know is that we've received word from a trusted source that there's a slight possibility that the White Bang and the Fourth War are working together. That's impossible, Kurama snarled with his sunglasses flashed red. The Fourth War was established to end the lives of all faunists, the White Bang especially. The White Bang aren't too fond of humans either, Sasuke said with a scowl. They're complete opposite in goals. What would they gain by working together? Who would ever expect them to work together? Naruto proposed with a frown. His teammates looked at him in confusion, while Osman gained a small smile. It's nearly perfect, but the fact that this was discovered by an outsider means that it was not intentional. There's a third party, has to be, for this to be discovered. Both groups are now part of a grander scheme, the Queen Scheme. We believe so, yes, Osman said. He took a sip of his tea and sighed as he set his cup down. And that is why we are trusting your team with this information. The four of you have the most knowledge on the Fourth War in all of the students' body, mostly because three of you have been personally affected by their attacks, and the fourth, what Haku has done in the past shall stay there unless he says otherwise, Naruto cut in firmly as he glared at the headmaster. Naruto put his hand on his partner's shoulder, and the morose look that had overcome him drained away. I don't care if he was part of the Fourth War, a Faunus Rights Assembly attack, or even a robbery with that dip Torchwick. Haku's my partner and friend, and it's my duty as his partner and team leader to trust him to tell us about himself when the time comes that he sees fit to do so. We're not here to learn about our teammate, Sasuke said firmly. Get on with the real issue already, Kurama said, his scowl still present on his face. The three adults were silent after the interjection and strong opinions of the three from Vacuo. Osman, after a moment, lifted his mug to take a sip and conceal a smile. When he placed his mug back down, Osman's neutral look had returned. Fair enough, he said. The reason you four are here is that you four have the most experience concerning the Fourth War and are certainly among the top tier as one of the best teams to start in this academy, if not for some property damage and tomfoolery. I dare say you'd be among the best in the world. The 4 teens grinned at the praise. Osman folded his hands together as he continued. Therefore, it is your duty as one of the greatest teams to ensure the safety of Vale during the upcoming festival. Your punishment has been revoked, and as headmaster, I authorize you to revoke or instill similar punishments with the permissions of your assigned watcher. You, Team Nox, will be responsible for ensuring this school's safety from threats both within and external. Thank you, Professor. The 4 boys nodded. Be safe, be careful, and be mindful of everything and everyone around you, Osman said. He turned to look at Asuma. With this said, I leave them in your care, Asuma. Thank you, Professor Osman. The teacher nodded before he looked at the 4 boys. Let's go. One final word of advice, Osman said before they could leave. The first students from Haven should be arriving sometime today, and I know that the students from Atlas, along with their headmaster, General James Ironwood, should be here as well. I believe you ought to know. Well, keep it in mind, Prof. O. Naruto nodded before he led his team out, and Asuma followed them. Good Witch huffed and folded her arms under her bust. I don't agree with this. They're just as young and prone to trouble as the girls in Team Ruby. They should not be given such power. I agree, but what power have I given them really? Husband asked. He stood and went to his window in the clock tower, staring at the clouds. Those four boys are special, but make no mistake, they will not abuse the right I've given them. Miss Belladonna is likely still troubled from the events of the night on the docks. Her team will assist her in quelling these doubts or concerns by any means necessary, even if that means going behind ours and Miss Yuki's backs. The connection they have with Team Nox would allow them to do such things with a loosely observant permission. I thought James was the one with the military expertise, Goodwitch said as she joined her friend by the window. Indeed he is. Ospin smiled secretively as he spotted a gleam in the distance. However, every good general has a good, intelligent officer besides him. Is that what you think yourself to be? Goodwitch asked. An intelligence officer? Hardly. Osmond scoffed. He took a sip from his mug and sighed. I'm a mere teacher, no more and no less. Haku, find out everything you can on the recent movements and attacks by the Fourth War over the past 10 years. I want patterns of attacks, notable members, anything we can use. Naruto instructed his partner as they entered Beacon's library building. After they had changed out of their school uniforms in their refurbished dorm room, Asuma had suggested the four went off to study while he prepared with the other teachers for the students of other schools for the students of other schools' arrival. Naruto, in a rather out of character moment, led his team straight to the library. On it, Haku willed a mirror to manifest in front of him before he disappeared off to the current events section. Kurama, you're going to be checking and double-checking the background of every student that's gone into and out of the guest schools over the past 3 years. You spoiled me, Naruto. I'll have their birthdays marked on 8 separate calendars by the time everyone else is done. Kurama chuckled and interlaced his hands together before he cracked his knuckles. He turned towards the records department, eager to do some hardcore hacking into the systems of other countries' school databases. Sasuke, I want you to memorize every nook, cranny, or crawl space that can be found in any building and that the students are going to room in. Sasuke arched a brow. What are you going to be doing? Duh. Naruto looked to his left where two teams were seated and then grinned at Sasuke's look of disbelief. What? Come on, man. I gotta make it seem like we're all still playing it cool and you're a dick, so you're automatically suspicious. You just want to make out with your girlfriend. Those are your words, not mine. Naruto grinned and patted Sasuke's shoulders. Come on, don't act like you hate it. You love crawling around in those dark spaces. You antisocial vampire, you. First of all, there's not even a denial. Secondly, I don't mind it if it's needed, but I don't enjoy it. Those are two different things. And finally, you owe me a favor in return, Sasuke said firmly with a poke in his team leader's chest. A big one. Deal. Naruto grinned as Sasuke walked off. You're a pal, Sasuke. Whatever, Uzumaki. Be sure to keep it sacred and keep it safe, Sasuke said over his shoulder while he walked out of the library. Naruto grinned as he snuck up on Yang, who was relaxed as can be while she played a board game of some sort with her team. Ruby, seated across from Yang, was either just as focused as Ruby or lost in her own thoughts. And finally, Weiss, on Yang's left, looked like she was trying to figure everything out. Heck, the only one who seemed to notice him was Ren, and the boy gave him a small look of annoyance when he did. Not that Naruto cared. He did what he wanted when he wanted, unless someone empowered by righteous venom fury said otherwise. Ren was not one of those people. I'd use that one next, Naruto said as he peered over his girlfriend's shoulder at her hand. He never actually played Remnant the game before, but he'd had a good idea of what needed to be done. However, this was not important, for there was hilarity to be had. All of the members of Team Ruby and most of Team Juniper, save for the annoyed Ren, jumped at his voice. Yang's cards jostled from her hands, and Naruto caught some before they landed while he laughed lightly. Geez, Whisker Boy, a little warning before you do something like that. Yang pouted at her boyfriend and snatched her cards out of his hands before she adjusted them and the girls fixed their game. But then it's not a surprise, Yang, Naruto said. He looked at the board thoughtfully and interlaced his hands behind his head. So, who's turn and who's winning? Ruby's turn and Blake is winning, Yang said with a small glower directed at her partner. The disguised fawn's blink. I am. Yeah, Ruby said with a frown. She looked at her hand and smirked. Okay, I think I'm ready. Yang Xiaolong, prepare your kingdom for battle. Bring it on. Yang returned heatedly as she pumped her fist. I deploy that Legion air fleet, Ruby cried as she held the card above her head. Yang gasped and put a hand on her chest in horror. Looks like I get to fly over your side and attack your walls directly, Ruby said as she began to animatedly discuss and act out her attack. And since Atlas is part of Mantle, my repair time is only lasts one turn. Obviously, the simulation that should be used in the real world, Naruto said lowly while his girlfriend smirked at her younger sister. He shook his head and decided to look for something to read since Yang was a bit preoccupied with her game to start making out. He never did deny Sasuke after all. I'll admit, that was pretty sneaky, sis, Yang said as she set her hand down and picked up one card slowly. Her gaze became hard and narrowed as she revealed the card. But you just activated my trap card. Naruto frowned as he flipped through a nearby copy of a hit comic series, Little Kuribo. Where have I heard that line before? You don't mean? Ruby squeaked. That's right, Giant Nevermore, Yang declared as she slammed her fist on the table. Note to self, don't play board games with Yang. She gets very into it. Naruto mused as he turned the page and chuckled. The sun will rise. Oh, Timothy Taylor, you make me laugh. Naruto listened to the girls play the game and snickered when White admitted she didn't know what was going on after Yang explained it, along with not too subtle warning that she will not forget the declaration of war, and that Teary Ruby said Wise could win in 3 turns. Sneeze started to cackle. Naruto looked up in mild alarm as the girl went slightly power mad. Naruto then chuckled when Yang crushed those plans mercilessly, and the two partners embraced tearfully. I hate these cruel games of emotions we play. Stay strong, Weiss. Shut up, don't touch me. Naruto snickered when Weiss hugged Ruby tighter despite her words. Yang turned and smirked at her partner. Alright, Blake, you're up. Yeah, I'm sorry. What am I doing? What a riveting and attention-focusing group you are, Naruto drawled. Yang gave him a look, and he ducked back into his comic with a small brow fuzzball on the cover. Shutting up? Hey, Ice Queen, mind if I join you? John asked as he walked over from his table after Yang explained the game once more to her partner. You're already losing points, man, Naruto said as he turned the page in his comic. What is that supposed to mean? If I have to explain it, then you won't learn. That doesn't make sense. You have to learn underneath the underneath. How does that help? Yo, little dude. The teens looked up as Sun approached them with a wide grin on his face and a preppy dressed up boy with blue hair that was shaved on the sides on goggles on his head. Have you been, man? Been fine, son. Who's the nerd? Naruto asked with a nod towards the boy with blue hair. I prefer the term intellectual, the blue-haired goggle-wearing boy corrected with a raised finger and a frown on his face. Prefer it all you want, but know that denial is an ugly thing. Naruto nodded at his own sage advice. That's true, Sun said. He grunted when the blue-haired boy punched his arm. Ow, what? Just saying. Sun rubbed his arm and looked at the gathered group. Right, well, Yang, Ruby, Blake, Ice Queen. Why does everyone keep calling me that? Weiss asked with a frown. Because it's an apt title, Naruto suggested dryly. He shrugged when she glared at him. What, Kurama's not here and he'd chew me out if I hadn't said anything? How would he know? Kira asked. Naruto gave her a smirk. He's that good. Naruto... Anyway, guys, I'd like to formally introduce you to an old friend and my partner. Sun continued with a grin to the blue-haired teen. I thought librarians were supposed to be reading, the goggle teen asked with a frown. Ren threw his hands up. Thank you. Pancakes, Nora snorted out as Ren's proclamation woke her from her dreams. Sun gave Neptune a quick glare. Shut up. Don't be a nerd. Intellectual, okay? Thank you. Neptune corrected firmly. You're a nerd. Accept it and move on with your life, Naruto muttered as he turned the page in his comic and snickered. He's got weird hair. I'm Neptune, the teen said with a small wave. Weiss set her cards down and gave him a welcoming smile. Really? Where are you from? Haven. Neptune grinned back and walked over to her side. And I don't believe I've caught your name, Snow Angel. Oh, come on. Are you kidding me? And John crossed his arms and grumbled when Weiss flushed slightly. Ha! Irony. Naruto snorted and turned the page of his comic. He then grunted when Yang delivered a quick smack to his stomach. I'm Weiss. Pleasure to meet you. Sun leaned over to Blake with a smile. So, I never took you as the board game playing type, right? I actually think I'm done playing. I'll see you guys later, Blake said as she set her cards down and walked off. Sun looked back at the group with a confused frown. Nora grinned back at him and held her arms up with a "what can you do" manner. "Woman, am I right?" "Right." "Always a pleasure to see the Love Doctor in action," Neptune said with a smile to his friend. Sun glared at him lightly. "Looks like you have an opening now," John said as he moved to sit down. Weiss rose and followed after Blake with Ruby in tow. John hung his head and looked at Yang. "Well, at least we can start a new game, right?" "Nah, I'm just going to win anyway," Yang said with a shrug as she tossed her cards on the table. "I'm out. Come on, Whisker Boy. I owe you for the catch earlier." Naruto grinned and tossed his comic behind him. When Yang grabbed him by his belt, he looked over his shoulder and gave Sun a thumbs up. The blonde faunus returned the gesture and grinned before he smacked Neptune's arm lightly. "See, that's what confidence gets you," Sun said as he gestured to the disappearing blonde couple. "How'd a guy like that get a babe like her?" Neptune mumbled with a frown. John sighed as he and Pyrrha cleaned up the game. Team Ruby left behind. "I ask myself the same question every day, man." "So all you did today was make out with your girlfriend?" Kurama asked as he followed his team leader back to their assigned and refurbished room. Haku and Sasuke had already returned from their respective orders, and it wasn't until after Yang was called back by her team did Naruto realize that Sasuke had sent him a message about retrieving their wayward faunus friend. It literally took Naruto 2 hours after he'd gotten the message to drag Kurama out of the library, and after that, it took 10 minutes to placate the faunus after he'd learned what the whiskered blonde had done for most of the day, and met one of Sun's teammates, Naruto said for the 15th time. He interlaced his hands behind his head. "Bit of a nerd, that one. His name was Neptune. Had blue hair." "Blue?" Kurama asked with a raised brow. Naruto nodded. "Yep. No freaking way. I'm telling you, it was as blue as the ocean. I'll believe it when I see it." Kurama scoffed. "No one dyes their hair blue." "I don't think it was dyed, dude." "What, you think it's a Sakura-like thing?" Kurama asked. Naruto shrugged. "Maybe." They rounded the corner to their bedroom just in time for them to hear Ruby welcome someone to Beacon. Kurama arched a brow as he looked over the newcomers in Haven Academy uniforms, black long-sleeved militarized tops with matching pants or plaited skirts. He recognized each one from their files, but their files were way too clean even for Haven. The first on the right, directly in front of Kurama, was a teenage boy with styled dark silver hair. He was well built and had features similar to Sasuke. The look in his gray eyes made Kurama's hidden gaze narrow. Those were the eyes of a killer, someone who was familiar with the ugly side of reality. His file said his name was Mercury Black, and that was the one thing about it that Kurama believed was true. The next was a teenage woman. She was a woman. Her gaze and posture screamed mental and emotional maturity. She had amber eyes with a similar gleam that Mercury had. Her black hair cascaded down over her left one and rested over her left shoulder. She had a sultry smirk on her face before she looked surprised at the two new arrivals in front of her. Kurama recognized her as Sunderfall. Again, the only thing in her file he believed to be honest, well, that and her height. No, wait, those are heels. The last was a teenage girl with dark skin and rounded red eyes that lacked the killer's hardness that her two companions had. Kurama was still wary of the minted-haired girl. Her eyes weren't those of a killer's, but those of a thief, like himself. The girl had eyes that soaked up every detail it could find and stored away for later after a second's glance. However, that gaze was not present in them now, for her eyes were locked with Naruto's, the whiskered teen's eyes equally wide. "Emerald?" Naruto breathed out. "Naruto?" Emerald's voice was just as soft. Kurama looked between the two and arched a brow. This was not good. End of chapter 11.